Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on drainage and wastewater management plans. I'm Peter Bide. I'm the chair of the Catchment-Based Approach Urban Water Group, and I'll be chairing this webinar. Before we start, a few housekeeping points. I think you probably saw the housekeeping points on the slide before we started, but just to summarise, please could you use the Q&A function for questions and the chat function for comments. You'll find those at the bottom of the screen of your Zoom screen. Also, there are live audio captions, live auto captions rather, which are available and you can access them by clicking CC at the bottom of the screen and selecting Show Subtitle. Then if you click again and go to subtitle settings, you can change the size. And this webinar will be recorded and circulated to CaBA partnerships. What do I hope we're going to get out of this webinar? Well, we hope that the webinar will bring the different catchment partners, particularly water companies and local authorities, together to discuss the various issues to be covered by a drainage and wastewater management plan. And we hope it will provide both direct help in preparing effective drainage and wastewater management plans that are resilient to future pressures, including climate change, and provide a focus for finding joined up solutions that provide multiple benefits, including for local communities. And in terms of outcomes, I'm hoping we get two outcomes from this. Firstly, just to bring catchment partners together to start conversations about joining up to produce effective drainage and wastewater management plans. But also we hope to produce a summary of the discussion in the webinar on the lines of 10 points for producing drainage and wastewater management plans that provide multiple benefits. And we'll make those available after we've had the webinar. There are two sessions in this webinar. The first is on what drainage and wastewater management plans are and what they can deliver. And the second is on how to ensure that drainage and wastewater management plans can deliver for all catchment partners. And there'll be a 5-minute break between the first and second sessions. There should be time for specific questions on the presentations after each session, but the main opportunity to put questions to our speakers and discuss issues will be in the panel discussion in the last half hour of the webinar. So without further ado, start the first session this morning. And I'd like to invite Adrian Lee, who's a technical policy manager at Northumbrian Water, to give us his presentation on what DWMPs are and why they're important to catchment partners. So Adrian, over to you.
Thanks, Peter. I'll just share my presentation. Hopefully you can now see that. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, good morning, everybody. As Peter says, my name's Adrian Lee, and I'm a technical policy manager at Northumbrian Water. I'm also our representative on the national steering group. So I'm a technical lead for our drainage and wastewater management plan, and I also represent Northumbrian Water on various task and finish groups at the industry level. To help set some context around why DWMPs are important, I thought I'd start with a bit of background and a bit of the history to the DWMPs and obviously why it's important in the environment that we work on. And then as I move through that, I'll start to talk a little bit about sort of some case study examples of some of the stakeholder engagement that we're doing at Northumbrian Water. So the framework for DWMPs has been developed in response to the need to improve the approaches taken by the water sector to improve long-term drainage and wastewater planning. So the need to improve the long-term strategy didn't mean that the water sector wasn't doing that already, but rather, I suppose, each company or region probably did things slightly differently or under different titles. We also have to recognize that we all have differing customer needs and often differing sort of environments in which we all live in. So the DWMPs themselves aim to provide a more consistent and transparent approach to planning. They support and are supported by a number of important programs and documents that are already out in the public domain and all are in delivery. Things like the water industry strategic environmental requirements, so WISER, reporting that the National Infrastructure Commission do around national infrastructure assessment, and obviously water company sort of direction, so sort of price review methodologies and consultations. Ultimately, the need for the alignment of plans and programs allows us to provide more robust evidence and lines of sight against the investment decisions that we make, and which I suppose ultimately lead to costs to our customers, essentially. So all of this started back in 2017, where the water industry, DEFRA, Welsh Government, Ofwat, the EA, CC Water, Blueprint for Water, the NIC, to name a few, started to lock themselves in some rooms and started to co-create the framework which we ultimately have published now. The needs and objectives were quite clear. The DWMP should aim to encourage collaboration across all of those responsible for drainage and wastewater. Challenges and opportunities should be collectively identified and developed with best value at front and center of everything that we do. So this was, and I suppose still is, quite ambitious, but as the last bullet point on this slide says, there was recognition that shared challenges really do need shared solutions. So in early 2018, the Drainage and Wastewater Management Framework was published, and it's hosted to this day on the Water UK website. In my opinion, and in the round, it does achieve what it set out to do. It does provide us with a framework for robust planning into the longer term. And by longer term, what we really mean is that 25-year view. It's obviously not the easiest document to read or digest. It is very long, and it does span multiple sort of technical appendices. And those that have read it, and I've seen probably other presentations, that there are a number of acronyms that it seems to have generated as well. I suppose it is important that we recognise where we are, though. It is the first cycle, and at the minute, it is a framework. It's not a statutory requirement for water companies at the minute, although this will change when the Environment Bill receives its royal assent, hopefully quite shortly. And there will obviously be some learning that we'll have to take from the first round for cycle one, as I refer to it. And obviously that learning will get applied and shared across future cycles of the DWMP. So, this is cycle one. This is the first time we've done this. These are long-term plans, and there will be multiple future cycles of the drainage and wastewater management plans, as there is with the water resource management plan, which is obviously a well-established framework or requirement at the minute. So back to the current framework and how it's being delivered. This is taken directly from the framework itself. The framework lays out the steps and processes that we all need to follow. So I suppose it starts at the top with a strategic context. This helps set the scene for companies' approaches to DWMPs. And for us and other water companies, we've consulted on our strategic context, and it's published, or our strategic context is published on our DWMP website. The next bit is the risk-based catchment screening, the RBCS. So the RBCS is an initial screening exercise which identifies which catchments have or are susceptible to risk. The baseline risk and vulnerability assessment, the Bravo stage then stress tests these catchments and identifies any resulting impact from things like climate change and growth and urban creep. And for this DWMP cycle, we and again, many of the water companies are busy with the option development and appraisal phase. So the ODA phase looks at developing opportunities to reduce the risk identified from that Bravo phase. So for Northumbrian Water, this has included a series of stakeholder engagement sessions where we've identified over 700 opportunity areas for possible collaboration. And I'll touch upon these or a bit of background to this in a few slides' time. So in terms of the background, the scene setting, this is the final slide, and it's taken from the DWMP Working Together document. And you know, personally, I think that's a very good document that tries to explain the DWMPs in a nutshell and why it's important in a collaborative environment. So I think, you know, this for us summarizes nicely the spirit of the framework and really does emphasize why every one of us on this call today really does have an important part to play in terms of the delivery of DWMPs, even in this early cycle. So on the left-hand side of this this slide, we have many of the challenges that we all face. The middle bit really describes a number of programs, strategies, and policies that are currently being delivered. And let's be honest, you know, the often siloed boxes that they all fit into and sit. And then the right-hand side really describes what we can all achieve by working together and collaborating together. And for me, you know, let's be honest, I'm sure that this only just scratches the surface of really what's ultimately possible. So I'll move on to just examples of how we've been engaging with stakeholders at Northumbrian Water. So engaging with stakeholders is fundamentally key to the successful delivery of any DWMP and for our DWMP. So we started this as soon as we could, and before the pandemic, we held a series of introductory workshops in person. As you might imagine, you know, that was the way of doing things at that point. So these workshops really explained our early thoughts and jointly worked up that strategic context document that I mentioned at the start. But since the pandemic, like many others, and obviously, you know, the call today is, you know, testament to that. You know, we've adopted a variety of engagement methods. So we've developed our DWMP website and our portal to try and get some content out there as early as possible. We send around quarterly newsletters. So these are quite informal and they just give our stakeholders a bit of an update of what's been happening within the last couple of months. We have an external steering group, which is obviously one of the recommendations from the framework. And so far we've held 4 very productive and engaging meetings. So with all of these methods, we try to keep the momentum going. And what we do is we try and encourage, you know, that informal and formal conversation really to continue throughout the delivery of our DWMP. So as our plans have developed, you can imagine that the requirements have also become a bit more detailed. So throughout August, we've embarked on quite an ambitious level of virtual engagement, and we held a series of 2-day workshops for each of our 7 strategic planning areas. So as part of this engagement, we invited over 150 external stakeholders and partners to take part in the sessions. So we were very conscious that not everybody on the calls would be fully up to speed with the DWMP. So every session started with a bit of an introduction, a reminder of what the DWMP was and the reason why we were doing it. These sessions offered a bit of a virtual catchment walk around each of the areas that we were looking at and where we'd identified that changing risk. And the purpose really of these catchment walkabouts wasn't really specifically to talk about that risk in any detail, but it was really to create a bit of an unconstrained view of the catchment and identify any opportunities for collaborative working, or actually any additional local knowledge of issues which the DWMPs could really try and align with. So you'll see with these two slides that we did try to invite a sort of number of stakeholders across wide-ranging organisations, and for us this was a bit of a sort of pointer from our strategic planning group meeting. The direct feedback that we had from that when we talked about this level of engagement was really to ask us to think about inviting more than just, I suppose, the usual suspects, the people that we would ultimately just default to when we were looking at normal plans within our business, and to really look outside of that. And as I say, invite those that we would not have traditionally sort of invited to the first engagement level. It's not to say that we wouldn't have engaged with these people sort of further down the line, but it's just to try and get everybody up to speed in terms of the first pictures. So these slides really give us a flavour of the organisations that were invited. It doesn't include everybody, and actually during the sessions, the stakeholders that we were talking to were calling out other people that we should contact, which we, as I say, we may have missed or previously not considered. So at the minute, we're trying to follow up with that and trying to engage with those people on a one-to-one basis. So I suppose, on to, what were we told? Well, a lot was the answer to that question. The map on the sort of left-hand side of this slide, this shows our sort of level 1 area for the DWMP. So this is our northern operating region within Northumbrian Water. The dots represent the information points from the stakeholder engagement sessions. So the dots represent something where a stakeholder has told us something about a particular catchment. And as I mentioned, we've received over 700 areas of opportunity, which I believe is a really powerful and hugely successful outcome from what those engagement days were really about. We were told about a wide range of sort of information. This included discharges from industrial sites which caused flooding and pollution to a watercourse within one of our stakeholders' back gardens. We were told about future development opportunities, highway schemes, and even wilding projects proposed by the RSPB. So every point on the map has additional detail held within it. So when it's clicked on, it reveals the source of the information as well as the detail of that particular opportunity. So currently we're sort of now using that information to reflect on its content and actually thinking about how we can best make use of that information. So what we've currently done is we've grouped the information into 3 categories. We've got inform, so opportunities that we can use to help inform our plans. We've got impact, opportunities which directly impact our plans and other things. And then record, so opportunities that perhaps might not currently align with our DWMP or a DWMP risk areas, but actually which may help inform future DWMPs or may link to other programs that we could deliver through other opportunity areas. So it's the first time that we've held such engagement on a wide scale sort of level of detail. And as I've said, we're really pleased with how it went. That said, we really do. We want to learn from the process, and there are areas we can improve on. So we did send survey monkeys out at the end to all of the participants, which we're currently processing the results of. And I can share any useful tips as and when we've got that in a usable format. The The events, as I say, were great and very successful. But on reflection, some of it wasn't all plain sailing. The first session that we had was a little bit difficult. It lasted only 40 minutes, which included 30 minutes of a bit of an introduction. It was the school holidays when we did all of this, so there was a bit of delegation, and obviously people couldn't make some of the sessions. Some of the stakeholders who were involved said more than others. And overall, I suppose the attendance was around 20% compared to those that were invited. But we still got a lot more than what we were bargained for. And I think that, again, I think, despite all of those sort of challenges that we had, again, on reflection, this was a very powerful opportunity that we had. So just on to the last slide, I thought I'd put some questions up in terms of, some of the questions that we're posing to ourselves internally and things that, I think we should reflect on in terms of the DWMP community and wider, really. Some of it, I've talked about in terms of this presentation. How do we use this information effectively and efficiently? We captured a lot of information across a lot of stakeholder, as I say, workshops. A lot of time was put into it. So how can we keep that information up to date and live? It's a very valuable and powerful tool. How do we use that information to influence other programs of work, to align opportunities? How do we fund all of the opportunities that we've identified? The DWMP will be part of that delivery vehicle, but it won't be everything. So how can we continue to do that? And then also, how do we keep customers informed of all of this collaborative opportunities that we've identified? It's a very powerful program that we've got here, and how do we keep them informed of things that we might do in the short term, things that we might do in the medium term, and things that we might do into the longer term. So that's they're the points that I'd just like to reflect on. And as I say, as Peter says, happy to take any more questions at the end of this session. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll come out of that and hand back to Peter.
Thanks very much indeed, Adrian. That was a really good introduction, both to DWMPs and to the whole process of engagement, and a really good example of proactive engagement. So we'll have a chance for a few questions on the presentations after Harriet's presentation. And I'd now like to hand over to Harriet. Harriet's the stakeholder and customer manager for capital projects at Thames Water. And Harriet's going to be talking to us about working in partnership to make a good DWMP. So Harriet, over to you.
On mute, there we go. Okay, cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me today. Hopefully everyone can see that screen now. So yes, so thanks, Peter. As he just said, I'm going to be doing a quick update and presentation on working in partnership to make a good DWMP. Obviously we all do it from our company point of view, but yeah, I'll run through some things. So kind of working together and why it's important for the DWMP, go through a little bit of a case study of kind of what we hope that the DWMP will be able to help us with in the future, our approach to engagements and challenges and opportunities, and then a little bit of an insight into potential partnership schemes that we're looking at through our DWMP already. Obviously not all confirmed, but just give you a bit of a look into that as well. So firstly, for us to kind of, obviously, Adrian's just run through really helpfully the kind of processes that we've been running through, and obviously has highlighted the importance of working together. For us at Thames Water specifically, a lot of stakeholders work and live in the area, a lot of customers. It's a really large area, and I'll run through some of the outlines of that in a minute. But the DWMP aims to be a really collaborative plan. It's quite different from the Water Resource Management Plan, which we obviously, lots of water companies have been running for lots of 5-year rounds over the last few years, and have got quite good at them now. But wastewater is a little bit different. It can't be managed effectively if organisations focus solely on their own part of it. We all need to kind of work together. There are multiple responsible parties such as risk management authorities, environment agency, local river and wildlife trusts that need to come together to be able to produce a plan that works for everyone. At the end of the day, the DWMP aims to be the kind of best value plan for a region and for the whole of the UK when you put them all together. And made up of projects which offer kind of multiple benefits. But as I'll show in a minute, it's not always been the way that we've worked. So this is a sort of really new way of working for water companies. And we all sort of need to be working together to make sure that we can get the most benefit for the communities that we live and work in. So I'm just going to give a quick example of kind of what we hope the DWMP will do in the future. So for us, as I say, we're kind of still early on in the process of this. We can't kind of give really clear view of what we're going to be putting forward into the DWMP yet. We're still sort of working through those stages of the process. But examples like this case study here, Headstone Manor Park and Wetlands, are the sort of projects that we really think that in the future DWMP will be the kind of strategy and mechanism for kind of highlighting risk areas like this, finding the opportunities, and then putting all the partners together to be able to deliver really good case study solutions like this, which help and deliver multiple benefits. So I don't know if anyone knows about this project. So it was kind of based on a contentious area that suffered from repeat network pollutions, and it also had the issue of the risk of flooding to neighbouring properties. As I say, DWMP is a slightly new way of working, and for this case study we really tried to look at the way that we were calculating the benefit. Before we were looking, Thames Water really only look at the kind of cost of failure approach. So we look at kind of how quickly and how much it would be for the area to fail, how much the risk kind of costs to us and to our customers, and it doesn't always meet the kind of qualifications for funding. Despite with this project, there could be other kind of really good multiple benefits. So there was a lot of internal and external discussion with all the partners that worked on this: local authority, Crane Valley Partnership, the Environment Agency, to try and bring all the funding together and get Thames Water involved in that so that we could really support this project. We did have to really go back to the modelling and really push to get things to get it changed, and not just aim for this cost of failure approach, and look at the wider benefits to the area, wider benefits to the communities that we work with. So by working with the Crane Valley Partnership, and aiming to co-fund innovative solutions and deliver multiple benefits, which some of you may know is the kind of, got to call it a catchphrase for our Smarter Water Catchments programme, which this was helped by. We did find the full funding required to kind of contribute to the wider scheme, and the project is finalising at the moment. So it involved a lot of work to be able to make this area really useful for people, to a community area for kind of installation of new kind of play park equipment and that kind of thing. But it also meant doing a lot of work to desilt the moat in the area, construct sediment ponds and reed beds to be able to improve the water quality going into the River Crane at Yedding Brook, and also do some work to be able to reduce flooding and improve the kind of aquatic environment. So this is just one example that obviously is one that's been carried out before the DWMP is finalised. This is just a case study, a kind of look ahead as to what we'd like to be able to do more of this in the future, focusing on more on what the benefit of the work could be, how we can kind of co-fund partnerships, and that's what we really hope that the DWMP can bring forward. If we look into the 25-year, it's difficult to look 25 years ahead, but actually if we start looking at the areas of risk and opportunity that come out from kind of the models and speaking to our stakeholders and their areas of risk and opportunity, then hopefully we can find lots of areas that overlap to be able to create space for case studies and example projects like this. So that's just an example of one that is a really good partnership project, and hopefully things that we can bring out in the future. So bringing it back to sort of just what we're doing on the DWMP. So from a Thames Water point of view, our approach to engagement at 3 levels. So Adrian ran through the process. Mostly you're looking at level 1 is the kind of whole of your water company region. Level 2 is, for us, we've separated it into catchment partnerships and focused on Thames Regional Flood and Coastal Committee partnership areas. And then level 3 is all of our kind of sewage treatment work, catchments, and our customers and communities. So yeah, there's been a lot of activity, which I'll show a little bit more on that over the last 2 years while I've been on this project, to try and communicate with everyone and make sure we've got everyone's views. But I just wanted to show this map on the right hand side, because as you can see, there's a lot of boundaries that don't match up. So this map currently shows our catchment partnerships, of which we've got 27, and our TRFCC areas. So there are 13 of those. As you can already see, those boundaries don't match up in many places at all. So obviously there's a few issues when we're trying to do engagement with our stakeholders as to which boundaries we follow when we're trying to engage with people through workshops. We've also got 54 lead local flood authorities within that area. And obviously our region covers 15 million customers. So it has been a real challenge to sort of make sure that we can work within those sort of set boundaries, and make sure that we take our stakeholders and customers along the journey with us. So I'll just move on to some challenges. So obviously everyone has gone through the same challenges over the last few years with COVID-19 restrictions, working from home. It's not been the kind of easiest way. Well, I think we're getting to it now, but it wasn't at the beginning the easiest way for everyone to be working together. I think when my project manager envisaged doing DWMP in a collaborative way, she was imagining a lot of kind of face-to-face sessions. We could all sit down, we could talk about the region. We can even go out and do site visits to lots of different places to try and look at potential areas for partnership projects, and really get to know our stakeholders in kind of one-to-one settings. But unfortunately, because of the restrictions that we lived in under, everyone had to learn to work from home. That's not something that's just sort of restricted to Thames Water. So we have had to use different ways. Obviously, Zoom is one of them, but Teams and doing workshops online. There's also the time frame and scope for this first round. As Adrian kind of went through, we are just focusing on a few kind of areas of risk for this one. So the climate change, urban creep and population growth as the main sort of scope for the DWMP of this round. That will probably develop in the future, and it is the first time we've been doing this. So there have been a few limitations in terms of what we're able to sort of progress through this first round of the DWMP. But I think the main one for me, as kind of trying to lead on the communication for this project, has really been that kind of the number and the split of the stakeholders that we've been trying to work with. We're just making sure that we speak to people at the right levels, bring people along from kind of understanding of the DWMP to actually really getting involved in the process of Brava, risk-based catchment screening, the optioneering process, and now for us moving into the final stages of creating a final plan. It has been really difficult to bring everyone at the same time along that journey with differing levels of understanding. And especially for us, I would say, with our catchment partnerships. So as I said, there's 27 of them in our area, all at differing levels of kind of maturity in terms of how we work with them, how frequently we engage with them, how much resource they've got to be able to support these kind of projects. So it's something that we're definitely looking to improve in the future, and we will take a lot of learning from this first time round, working with all of our stakeholders and our customers as well, to be able to sort of progress and develop for the second round of the plan for the next 5 years and on to 25 years. There have been some opportunities as well. Obviously, the idea of the DWMP is to identify co-funding opportunities, co-create projects that deliver for the society and the environment, and it's been really useful to speak to loads of our stakeholders kind of on online meetings and face-to-face in some cases, to be able to use their local knowledge to really understand the areas that we're working in and the options that we take forwards for those regions. So just a little bit from Thames Water. I'm not going to run through all of these, but we've had to do kind of probably a little bit more than we would have done if we'd done things face-to-face. but just in different formats. So I think, yeah, 12 planning objectives for Thames Water were kind of decided, some from the national level and then some for our more local region through a consultation right at the beginning in kind of 2018-19. We have done some customer research, obviously very high level on long-term planning for wastewater, but we have managed to get some customer views on the future priorities, and also some of the options that we took through optioneering. We've managed to do some focus groups with our customers to understand what they want. Kind of the same as Northumbrian, we've done a sort of website update, new customer and practitioner portals to be able to kind of share data and be as transparent as possible, and then various workshops of differing sizes, surgeries, webinars, all those kind of things over the last few years to try and get everyone up to speed on where we are at the moment. So these are just some images of our kind of customer portal and website, trying to keep that at a sort of easier level to understand for our customers. At the bottom left, the internal flooding baseline risk, that's obviously at a level 2. We did that at the TRFCC partnership level, and we also did one at Catchment partnership level, so people could see the kind of risk levels for 2020 and the 2050 future ones as well on our customer portal. Then the middle is our practitioner portal, which is more restricted. So we've had to kind of give specific access to stakeholders who are working with us on the DWMP. And that shows a lot more detail. So that goes into the kind of individual sewage treatment work, catchment risks and opportunity areas through heat maps. The top one is from Brava, on the same as you can see from the customer one. So that's the internal flood risk for 2020, shown on a heat map, which you can zoom in and out and go into a little bit more detail. And then the bottom one is our the options that went through to optioneering. So you can click on a sewage treatment work catchment and it scrolls through which of the options went through to the optioneering process. So we've tried to be as transparent as possible with information and get kind of data sharing agreements in place where we can. That did take a little bit longer, I think, as everyone was trying to do the same thing at the same time. But there are ways that we've been trying to work around it, like all other water companies, to be able to make us work together. And then finally, so in November, so literally starting on Thursday, actually this week, we've got regional level 2, which is our TRFCC partnership area workshops coming up to be able to run through the outputs of the optioneering and kind of give people a first look at what a catchment plan might look like within the DWMP. So we've got some activities that we're going to be using, Mural, which is an online sort of post-it thing, which we'll be using to get people's thoughts and comments on some potentially some more partnership projects and the kind of timescale for our suggested plan. So lots of different ways of doing things. All water companies I know have done very different things and have tried to make it as accessible as possible to be able to work with us on DWMP. But again, lots of learning for the future. Final slide from me is just a little bit of a look ahead to what we might be able to do. So within the workshops I've just mentioned, we're going to be talking about partnership projects with our stakeholders. We took over the whole process, we've taken away a lot of information from our stakeholders on areas of risk, potential partnership projects that might be able to be progressed in the future, or just areas that really need to be looked into for a solution. So for the workshops, we've mapped this map on the right hand side of your screen, maps out some of the example catchments that we might be discussing with our stakeholders. Either kind of SUD schemes or just trying to ways of reducing flooding. We might not even have a kind of suggested solution for them yet. We just really want to talk to our stakeholders about them, and we're hoping to get more through these opportunities to speak to people. So the DWMP is a strategic investment plan. It's one that we have to keep reminding people it's not a delivery plan. It will be a 25-year strategy for how we'd like to be able to deliver on all the targets that we've set ourselves. The actual solutions and the kind of specific projects that go through and are funded will be done at a kind of business plan level through the price review. So it's kind of it's a difficult one to manage when you have to sort of manage the expectations that all of the things that go into our drainage and wastewater management plan may not in the end get to be funded in the first 5 years, but may have to be moved through and progressed as we go forward. But it's really important for us that any of the outcomes of the DWMP focus on customers and communities, the environment and the drainage and wastewater services and how we make them more resilient for the future. So there's lots of opportunities, and we've had lots of conversations, and yeah, it's exciting to see what will come out of the plan at the end of this year, and we'll be able to share more information. But the main thing I would say is that partnership working is the most important thing, and there are a lot of things to learn from all of the water companies, I think, over the last few years, and specifically for us, I think it will be how we work with catchment partnerships going forward. So we'd really love the opportunity for that to be improved in the future. I think that's it from me. So thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Harriet. That was a really good example of actually doing this in practice, and great examples of co-funding, of getting more for less by working in partnership. And I think that's really key to what we're talking about today, is realizing the opportunities that the individual partners can't manage on their own, but working in partnership, they can really achieve something by putting their resources together. So thanks very much for that. We've got a bit of time for questions for Harriet and Adrian before we have a short break. So if I could ask both of you to come back on screen. I've got questions here. First one, I'll do this one. Jeff Roberts has asked, the whole process seems suitable for formal collaboration with catchment hosts. Have you considered this and using their expertise to help? I'm going to cover this in my presentation. The short answer is yes. Harriet and Adrian, would you like to say anything about that, about working formally with catchment hosts?
I think it's, yeah, for us, it's something that we've tried hard to use the catchment host where possible. I think it's, again, it's, as I said, it's sort of something for us that we really need to improve in the future. The catchment hosts we have worked with have been really helpful, and it just, I think it depends for us how we work out the easiest way to get the information to people, give people enough time to be able to send it out to the rest of the catchment partnership, get the information, get comments back to us, and then feedback. So I think that process for us needs some improvement so that we can work that out in the future.
Thanks. Another question we've got is, to what extent can DWMPs incorporate multiple sources of funding and generally call upon input from a range of stakeholders? And I think this is around what extent will the water industry still control what's going on? Adrian, I think you're muted. Adrian, I think you're, are you? No, I can't. I don't know what's going on. I can't hear you. No, I think we've got a technical hitch here. Adrian doesn't look as though he's muted, but I can't hear him.
Can you hear me now?
I can now. Yeah, that's great.
Bizarre. In terms of, I mean, in terms of delivering DWMPs, I think to get a successful outcome for long-term planning, I think there does need to be a fundamental shift in terms of how things are delivered, how things are funded, how things are co-created. Obviously, a lot of that takes time and experience, and a lot of that will take the learning and the process. So I don't think any of that will be an overnight thing. I think yes, the water companies obviously have a requirement to fulfill and to deliver this thing, but I think for that holistic catchment approach that ultimately we're trying to deliver here, I think there will be opportunities where yes, the water company will lead on, but then other perhaps other partners might lead on, and we will support them in a supportive role. But again, I think there is a lot of things we need to reflect on. There's a lot of things we need to fundamentally change. There's a lot of activity and programs which aren't aligned with the DWMP process at the minute. We need to get them to the forefront of what we're trying to do, and see how we can influence that and lead into it. So I think ultimately all of that needs to happen for successful DWMPs. Whether it will happen in cycle 1, perhaps not. But as I say, these are long-term plans which will evolve, and I'd like to think that that environment will sort of nurture itself going forward, and as these continue, really.
Thank you. Another question we've got: RBMPs and flood risk management plans open for consultation. Can the DWMP process feed into this?
Again, definitely. I think we need to reflect on that consultation, and as I say, the current delivery in terms of what we're doing in DWMPs. There's a timing issue, as I've just mentioned. But again, and that's the same as I say, a lot of different consultations that have just been out or will be coming out in the future. We've got a bit of visibility of some linked timelines that the sort of the industry have put together, so we can try and be a bit more lined up in terms of that approach. So the short answer is yes, but we just, as I say, we just need to be careful of timings and reflect on that, and we'll get some delivered in this first cycle, then we'll take learning and get that embedded into future cycles as we move into sort of that that ultimately the more strategy world that this is going into as well.
Yeah, thank you. A comment here, which may be cynical. Is the process finally forcing water companies to take collaboration with stakeholders seriously? I think to some extent it is. I mean, good water companies. I mean, the people who are already talking to other stakeholders. It's just providing a vehicle for that to happen. But I think it's pushing water companies who maybe weren't quite so active in terms of engaging with stakeholders along that line. I don't know whether anybody else wants to comment, but
yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I think it's not to say that partnership working has been sort of pushed down to the lower priority beforehand, but I think just for kind of from the example that I showed, I think it's the thing for us is kind of doing it differently, how we actually kind of choose the partnership projects that are really important, and actually how we do that through kind of not just looking at our model and saying, oh, actually it doesn't look like it is a risk in the future. We actually do it from a kind of holistic view from everyone, kind of multiple benefits and other things that could come from it, kind of community kind of help and that kind of thing. So I think we need to look at it as a kind of wider piece than just this is our risk and this is where we need to get to in the future. It is everyone's risks now all together, and how we improve those for the future. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. Another question: to what extent are nature-based solutions being considered? What can enable more nature-based solutions to be used to resolve some of the challenges and deliver the opportunities identified in DWMPs?
So, I mean, in terms of green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, they're the top of the in terms of our hierarchy, and I suppose other water companies as well, in terms of what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to deliver. I think we again, it's timings issue. At the minute, in terms of the water industry, we're funded within a sort of a regulatory cycle of 5 years. I think regulators need to think a bit more long term and more strategically about how opportunities into the future may get funded. So that will enable us to consider more nature-based solutions and get them delivered, and be less reliant on that sort of grey infrastructure type solution. But certainly for long-term planning and the challenges that we face, it's definitely they're the opportunities we need to consider. They maximise the opportunities for collaborative working, and as Harriet says, they by far deliver the best benefit across catchments and various stakeholders. So that there are a few things that I think definitely need to change, as I've mentioned, but they're not new things. We're talking with the right people and having the right conversations, and certainly regulators and other people are fully aware, because these things exist within the storm overflow conversations that are going on at the minute in the DWMP world as well. So we're moving in the right direction again, but
We've got a lot of questions coming in, more than we can manage now, because I've got to try and stick as closely as possible to the timetable. So, I mean, we've got questions about funding, we've got questions about how the partnership process works. There are a lot of very interesting questions coming in. So I hope that the people who post those questions will stay around for the Q&A session, the panel discussion towards the end of the webinar, because I'd like to discuss all those, but I think we need to stop the discussion now. Thanks very much for everybody who, I'm very pleased that we've got such a lot of interest. I mean, the questions are really coming in thick and fast. But we'll break now for 5 minutes and we'll reconvene about 5:02. So now's your chance to nip off and make a cup of coffee. Thanks very much for what you've all done so far. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks.
Welcome back, everybody. Ready to start the second session now. The second session is looking at the practical issues around DWMPs, and I'd like to start with a presentation on working in partnership to make a good DWMP. And this is in relation to working in partnership with the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership. So Harriet, sorry, Vicky and Zoe, yes. This presentation is from Zoe Hancock and Vicky Farwig, and Zoe is the Catchment Partnership Coordinator for the Bristol Avon Catchment, and Vicky is the Flood Risk Coordinator at Wessex Water. So Zoe and Vicky, over to you.
Okay. Right, can you see the screen all right?
Yes, thanks very much.
Lovely. Okay, so Zoe and I have decided to do a presentation to you today to talk about actually how we can get the partnership working to really start to come together as part of the drainage and wastewater management plans and deliver for all catchment partners. So with the presentation today, we're going to talk through a little bit about the approach that we've taken within Wessex Water and our partners. Zoe's going to talk then about the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership, and then we're going to go through the River Froome Reconnected case study, and then finish off with a few slides about opportunities and challenges that we've encountered so far. So as you've already heard this morning, the DWMP, it's all about our long-term 25-year plan to work to deliver resilient drainage and wastewater infrastructure going forwards in the face of growth, urban creep and climate change. And as part of the DWMP assessment, we're looking at different planning horizons. So we're looking to see what we need to do in the short term, in the medium term and the long term. And all of these assessments will then feed into the DWMP programme, which will then in turn be used to help inform what goes into our PR24 business plan that will inform the funding that we get to help deliver the programme at the end of the day. So one of the things that I'm always really keen to ensure is that our stakeholders really have a clear understanding of what our objectives from the water company are in terms of delivering the drainage and wastewater management plan. So across the whole of the UK, all water companies will be reporting on common planning objectives. So these are the planning objectives that we've got listed here. In addition, water companies can also have bespoke planning objectives. And in Wessex Water, we worked with our stakeholders back in the early days to come up with our 6 bespoke planning objectives that we'll also be reporting on in addition to the national common planning objectives. So over the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a lot of work doing a lot of modelling to understand what the problems are in the catchment, how big those challenges are, and how difficult it will be to solve those problems. And the outcome of that is then we've got different categories associated to our different sewage treatment catchments. So we've got some catchments that have been defined as complex, so they're going to be more challenging to fix. That's potentially where you have got more partnership opportunities, because we might need to work with other stakeholders to deliver the options that need to be taken going forwards. While the standard catchments are more simple problems, it's where there might not be that much growth within the catchment, but there could be some opportunities there to work together as well. One of the things that we've done with our stakeholders from the outset is to really clearly get an understanding of where those priority areas are within the catchment. So we've highlighted those in the bold on the diagram across. So in terms of the options that we'll be looking at to actually deliver the drainage and wastewater management plans, there's a whole range of options that we can look at, from the way that we treat our services to traditional infrastructure, to looking to see how we can separate surface water out of the systems, or work with our customers and partners to help educate others, or to work together to look to see how we might be able to get partnership projects coming forwards. The other element of the DWMP is where we can flag up where things perhaps might need some attention, so that we can also look to see how we might be able to influence policy going forwards. So in terms of the decision making of what options will be taken forward as part of the DWMP, it goes through a whole complex range of factors that inform that decision process, and it's taking into account the multiple benefits and the environmental factors, as well as the benefits that we need to achieve to improve our performance. Zoe, do you want to?
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, thanks, Vicky. As Peter mentioned, I'm Zoe Hancock, and I've been the catchment coordinator for the Bristol Avon Catchment Partnership since about 2014. We published our catchment plan back in 2015, and then we kind of committed to review that every 5 years. So kind of during COVID, over the last year, we've been working with all of our partners to review our aims, and we're refocusing our actions and just updating everything, really. So what I wanted to kind of draw out on this slide was the fact that we've got kind of refreshed 7 of our key aims that the partnership's all committed to working towards. I'm not going to talk you through all of them at the minute, but what I do want to kind of emphasize is that 4 out of these aims, and they're just highlighted in green, align really closely with the drainage water management plans. So I think it just demonstrates the importance of the catchment partnerships working closely with the water companies to help with the development and hopefully the future delivery of the drainage water management plans moving forward. So yeah, the next slide is basically, it shows some of the partners we're working with. We've been working together now for quite a long time, and I feel like it's constantly evolving and growing, but we have good coverage of partners that we engage with already. Wessex Water have been very engaged from the beginning. They co-host the partnership with the West of England Rural Network, and have provided a really great source of stability from a funding point of view to support my position and other work across the catchment. And we have really good engagement with the local authorities in our catchment as well. There's 5 unitary authorities, and we work closely with those and a lot of the NGOs like the Bristol and Rivers Trust and CUWG, etc. So it's really encouraging that we have a strong network of partners already through the catchment partnership. And Vicky attends our steering group meetings, which are quarterly. So we have that communication route already established, which is really it's a good basis to have. I think, Vicky, you were going to come in at this point.
Yeah, and on the back of that, we've used those existing relationships, existing networks, to have those informed conversations. So we've done it through attending existing meetings. You know, if people are already around the table, we've been able to bring DWMP into existing meetings. And then we've also had some larger workshops as well, like as you've seen with the other water companies. So it's a whole range of engagement measures that we've looked at to actually get people to understand actually how the DWMP might be able to be worked into existing projects that are being thought about and developed.
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah. So kind of building on that, I just thought it'd be useful to share a map of our catchment. We've worked really hard with the partners over the last 5 years to develop a kind of project pipeline of projects to try and look at how we can coordinate and facilitate and support partnership working to improve the water environment. And there's a lot going on. We've got really good coverage. And I think for most of the bigger strategic programs that have definitely emerged more in the last few years, there's already a kind of partnership or a task group or a steering group pair project. And it's really exciting to see how those are developing and looking at how we can integrate those projects within other work streams. And we just thought it'd be helpful to just talk you through about how the River Frame Reconnected Partnership is established. And Vic has helpfully highlighted that in a red circle. It's one of the tributaries that drains into the north of Bristol. So it starts in South Gloucestershire in a very rural setting in the headwaters, and then it flows down into a very urbanised section of Bristol before it meets the River Avon. And I think the key thing I'd like to say is that it just takes a long time to set these partnership programmes up and get everybody engaged. And we did some work through the Catchment Partnership back in 2015. We followed the Ecosystem Services Evidence Review approach, and we tried to collate all of the known data and evidence at that time to understand where are the high-risk areas, where are the issues in the catchment, where are the opportunities.
the Bristol Froome catchment that you can see there came out as a really good opportunity to address a lot of issues, but also try and deliver a lot of improvements through partnership. So the Catchment Partnership played quite a pivotal role at the beginning in bringing together some of those key funding partners who you can see along the bottom. So Wessex Water, Bristol City Council, South Gloucestershire Council, so it crossed two big council areas, and the Environment Agency. And I think the success story of the River Froome Reconnected has been around the fact that we managed to set up a steering group. So these partners now meet every 6 weeks on average. They're all financially supporting a dedicated project officer role. So that's really important to keep the momentum going and try and join up all the dots. There's so much going on just at this scale. You really need to have that focus. And the project officer has been key really in helping develop a River Froome catchment plan to identify what can happen and what needs to be targeted moving forward. And the other key thing to mention is that not only has this got now an established kind of governance, and they're very keen to work with all of the other partners who are already working in the catchment, like the Bristol Avon Rivers Trust and FWAG and the Avon Froome Partnership. There's so many partners who are active in this area. There's also been a lot of feasibility and scoping work done. So we're not starting from an area or a place that we don't know. There's been a lot of walkover surveys done, identifying issues, and also weir assessments looking at fish passage. So, I think all of that has helped this partnership be successful in this last year in applying to the DEFRA Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme. And they're currently working in year one of the development phase of that, but it's a 6-year programme, bringing in approximately £6 million to look at how they can collaboratively deliver flood resilience measures and adapt to climate change moving forward. So I think this slide, what I really wanted to draw out from this slide is the importance of aligning all of the different work programs and funding opportunities in one area and seeing how you can integrate that to deliver improvements for the water environment. And on the left there, just to add a bit more detail, the DEFRA innovation programme, Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme, is being led by Bristol City Council. So they're one of the key partners on the steering group for this catchment. And the 6 kind of emerging themes that are coming out of this, as I said, it's still in the very early stages, but you've got natural flood management measures being looked at in the headwaters in the more rural areas of the catchment to help slow the flow. And you've got the nature-based solutions. So there's big development projects and schemes going on in central Bristol where the River Froome passes through, and looking at how they can build in more river restoration, resilience options, nature-based solutions to help build resilience to climate change moving forward. But what's been really encouraging is that the water company, Wessex Water, is helping take a lead on the second one there, the retrofitting of the suds. And I think that just demonstrates that it truly is a collaborative approach, and it wouldn't work unless everybody came to the table and brought something and committed time. And there's a lot of time and effort and resource goes into developing these bigger programs. And I think they're stacking them up against things like the Environment Agency doing a catchment investment strategy in that area of the catchment. So there'll be some really helpful information about where they're prioritising their assets and funding moving forward. And then the Drainage Water Management Plans provide another mechanism where the focus is on the water company assets, but it's about how can we identify options and solutions and the different opportunities that Vicky was talking about previously, about where can the partnership work together to help deliver what we're trying to do through the catchment partnerships, but also strongly aligned with what the water companies are looking to deliver through the Drainage Water Management Plans. So I think I'm handing back over to Vicky now.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things I wanted to come across is that we have done long-term strategic planning for many years. So within the Bristol Froome catchments, we've invested heavily in a large pipeline in a tunnel, which has been delivered in various phases. And within this catchment, the final stage of that tunnel will be completed within 2023. So there's already been a substantial amount of investment in the catchment. But there are also other opportunities and areas that we're interested in working to help look at where we can resolve some of the other challenges within the catchment. So at the moment, as Zoe said, we're very early days in terms of defining what the actual strategy is or how we might end up working with the different partners and stakeholders going forward. But these are some of the opportunities that are likely to come forward, perhaps to feed into the wider strategy that will be delivered over the next 25 years. So a key thing is about informing our customers and businesses. One of the key things that we do have problems with is where you get blockages from wet wipes and sewer misuse. So we've got campaigns that we can go out and, you know, perhaps get some of our partners and stakeholders to help deliver some of our messages. Where we've got groundwater infiltration into the systems, we might look at programs of infiltration sealing, or where we've got surface water problems, surface water flooding issues. The video there is showing where we've actually done surface water attenuation with another partner, another council, to reduce the surface water flood risk. So there's opportunities there through looking at ponds and storage features. Alternatively, we might need to look at more traditional solutions, so look at the attenuation, the tank storage options to come up with the solutions to reduce or to improve the resilience of our drainage and wastewater infrastructure. The other thing that we are keen to do is to look to see where we can look at using more sustainable solutions. And the example here is a wetland that we've delivered to help improve the water quality within one of the neighbouring catchments. So all of these ideas, along with the ones that are listed on the bottom, could all form part of the suite of measures that we might need to implement within this catchment going forwards within the next 25 years. And so by having the sight through the DWMP of what we're looking to do provides a really good opportunity to have those conversations with our partners and stakeholders so we can start to align all of our different partnership opportunities. So in terms of the question that we were asked to answer as part of this presentation, the challenges that we've come across, I think one of the things that's been really key is the fact that this is the start of the journey. The DWMP is delivering a step change in how we deliver resilient drainage and wastewater infrastructure and services, which is really great. We've got an amazing new evidence base that we haven't had before. And so one of the challenges is to actually understand how we can share that information. So we've got our external facing website, and then we've also got a hub similar to the examples that you've already seen this morning. But you know, there's different ways that we've been engaging with our stakeholders throughout the journey so far. And I think for this first stage, it has been learning by doing. So we've been learning as well as our stakeholders. We've also the debates around traditional and versus sustainable storage solutions, or sorry, traditional versus sustainable solutions. With more traditional solutions, they're like sometimes come up as being cheaper than the sustainable solutions. So that's where the discussions around partnership funding and making sure that we can align priorities could then lead, and taking into account multiple benefits, could then lead to sustainable solutions being put forward. The timeframes that we're working to for the DWMP, we've been working on this for a couple of years so far, and we have got to complete our draft DWMP early next year. So, and then the final DWMP will be delivered in 2023. So there will be opportunities as well for formal consultation in addition to the conversations that are already going on amongst the different meetings that we all attend. And I think the one final challenge that I'd like to highlight here is with the resources that are required from not only within the water companies, but also within the stakeholders to enable us all to have those informed conversations, but also have the time and space to develop these ideas, to make these ideas into reality. And so for the final slide, I'll hand over to Zoe to give the Catchment Partnership perspective.
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, so I mean, I think we were kind of set with this presentation. You know, how can drainage wastewater management plans deliver for all catchment partners? I mean, that's a big question, and I think the key messages I thought that really need to be pulled out are that, you know, looking at the outcomes and solutions needed, that they need to be embedded within the wider plans and strategies. You know, we need to find a way to integrate them and align those different work programs, and we're trying to do that through the Catchment Partnership with lots of different programs, but I think the drainage water management plans offer us a really strong mechanism to engage with the water companies more. And you know, I think it's generally on a positive track now. I think the resources that Vicky mentioned is going to be a challenge for the Catchment Partnership, but it's, you know, that's a challenge everyone's facing. And you know, ultimately the catchment-based approach, you know, can provide that mechanism to help join up the dots and deliver those solutions. And hopefully the case study we showed you about the River Free and Reconnected, although that is still in its early kind of development stages, it's starting to really reap some benefits and show how bringing people together and having those joined up conversations and planning from the beginning will help us hopefully deliver much more sustainable solutions in the long term. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Zoe and Vicky. That was a really good run through of a lot of the issues and what you can do in terms of practical solutions. And it leads very nicely, thank you very much, into the presentation that I'm going to do now, which is about partnerships to deliver drainage and wastewater management plans and the opportunities and challenges from that, which is really a summary of what you and the other presenters today have said. So without further ado, I'll go straight into my presentation, and we'll cover any questions in the panel discussion afterwards. So I'll just get my slides up. Hang on while I fiddle with the text. So I hope you can all see my screen now. What I'd like to cover in this presentation, as I said, is really a summary of what we've already been talking about. It's how partnerships can help deliver DWMPs, and particularly the opportunities and challenges. I think DWMPs are potentially a fantastic opportunity to achieve integrated water management. And this diagram, which is taken from the Syria guidance on delivering integrated water management through the planning system, this diagram shows how, by bringing together water supply, surface water and flood risk management, and wastewater disposal, integrated water management releases benefits for each sector in an integrated and more effective way. And it shows the good outcomes that can be delivered through integrated water management when urban planning and design provides the green and the blue space and the improvements to the built environment to create truly sustainable development. And there are really 10 benefits that integrated water management can deliver, and just remind ourselves of those. It can reduce risk of flooding from a range of sources at a range of scales, from landscape scale natural flood management reducing the risk of river flooding, to SUDS reducing and attenuating runoff to reduce the risk of local flooding. It increases water efficiency and reduces water stress through rainwater harvesting and water efficient buildings, and grey water and wastewater recycling and reuse to reduce demand on the public water supply and the wastewater infrastructure. By reducing or removing pollution from surface water and providing a more natural water environment, it provides a good quality biodiverse water environment. And providing water management and efficiency solutions to challenges such as flood risk, availability of water, lack of drainage capacity, and poor urban environment enables sustainable new housing to be built. Improving urban environments and enabling sustainable redevelopment facilitates economic growth and regeneration. And integrated water management interventions can enhance biodiversity by providing a more natural environment, introducing a range of habitats and species at a range of scales, often in otherwise biodiversity poor urban areas. Better blue-green infrastructure provides functional connected green space, which delivers multiple benefits, connecting urban places for water, for wildlife, and for people. It provides good quality open space, which, as well as managing water, is accessible, creates more livable places, and importantly, promotes health and well-being. It helps us mitigate and adapt to climate change by reducing the urban heat island effect, reducing energy consumption, making better use of water, and enabling our towns and cities to better cope with more extreme weather events. And finally, but very importantly, using resources more sustainably and effectively enables cost savings and efficiencies, particularly through partnership working delivering multiple benefits, which makes schemes affordable so more can be done for less. So let's have a look at the challenges. There are a number of hurdles we need to overcome if we're to produce DWMPs to meet these aspirations. The first, as we've heard, is a lack of resources. This is an issue for all those involved in water management, but it's critical for local authorities, many of which have barely enough resource to discharge their statutory functions and nothing available to engage in anything beyond that. It's also an issue for water companies due to the large number of different local authorities they need to work with. And for most water companies, this is several lead local flood authorities and scores of local planning authorities. The second issue, the second challenge, is lack of awareness, particularly in some local authorities, of the importance of water management and of the multiple benefits that integrated water management can bring and how DWMPs can deliver them. The third challenge is around data, particularly accessing and sharing data. And this is an issue in terms of both commercial confidentiality of data sets, but also data confidentiality on a wider spectrum. And the final challenge I'd like to address, and this is a really important one, is the complex and disjointed arrangements for managing water. And to explain this, I'd like to look at the arrangements for managing water in a bit more detail. This diagram comes from the Syria guidance on delivering integrated water management through the planning system. And it's a rather good representation of just how complex the system for managing water in this country is. As you can see, there are 4 separate pieces of legislation, all working, or hopefully working together to deliver integrated water management, with 3 key bodies delivering them. On the left side of the diagram, local authorities are delivering local plans under the Planning Acts and surface water management plans under the Flood and Water Management Act. And this is further complicated because in most authorities, the planning function is in the district councils and the lead local flood authority function is in the county council. And on the right-hand side of the diagram, the Environment Agency is responsible for river basin management plans and water companies are responsible for water resource management plans and DWMPs. And just to show you this diagram, show how not only how the different plans join up, there are lots of plans, but the number of different linkages between them. And this diagram is also from the Syria guidance, and it shows how the plans should join up. And the key ones to look at here are the DWMPs, local plans, the river basin management plans, and also importantly, the catchment partnerships, catchment management plans. But it's not all doom and gloom. And I'd like to look at some of the solutions now. So first of all, lack of resources. How can we tackle that? Well, showing stakeholders in the DWMP process how through partnership working, the sort of examples you've seen, and delivering multiple benefits, they can do more for less. they can get things done which they couldn't afford to do on their own through collaborative funding and partnership work, through co-funding and partnership working. And I also think it's very important that we give local authorities a statutory duty to input to DWMPs. I think we probably missed the boat with the Environment Bill. I was hoping that the Environment Bill, in addition to making it a statutory duty on water companies to prepare a DWMP, could also make local authorities, or give local authorities a statutory duty to input to DWMPs and the resources to meet this commitment. But as I say, I think we probably missed the boat on that one, but we need to keep pressing on it. Otherwise, local authorities really won't be able to engage in most cases. Lack of awareness. This is really a communication issue. It's a matter of communicating to all the catchment partners the importance of integrated water management and the multiple benefits and particularly cost savings that can be secured through the DWMP process. Accessing and sharing data. Good communication between the partners is very important in this, so that people understand what's available and what the constraints are in using it. Data sharing agreements with clear protocols on what's to be shared and how are important. And also things like secure data portal services. There are all sorts of ways that we can make data available and share it. It just needs a bit of goodwill on the part of all the different parties. And complex and disjointed arrangements for managing water. Well, I think that catchment partnerships should play a key role in coordinating the input to DWMPs. And I'd just like to show you how this could work. So here's our diagram again of the responsibilities and how they should all come together. And if we put catchment partnerships in, put the catchment management plan that the catchment partnerships responsible for doing or is doing in the middle, then that can help pull all the different plans together and feed back into the different plans and provide that coordination function. So catchment partnerships, through their catchment management plans, can bring together the local planning authorities, the lead local flood authorities and the Environment Agency in partnership with water companies, so that the DWMP reflects their collective aspirations and their respective plans join up, and also provide the hooks for delivering integrated water management at a range of scales, from catchment and sub-catchment scale right the way through to individual developments, to contribute cumulatively to catchment scale urban water management. That's the aspiration from this. So what resources are available to help us do this? You've already seen the Water UK guidance mentioned on working together to improve drainage and environmental water quality through drainage and wastewater management plans. This is published by Atkins, and it's very good on why partnerships are essential to deliver effective DWMPs and what each partner should be able to get out of it. The guidance published by CaBA's Urban Water Group on how urban partnerships can deliver sustainable urban water management through local action is very good on detail of engaging with key partners, including what each can bring to the table and what each can get from partnership working, and also importantly, how they can be engaged. And the guidance published by Syria on delivering better water management through the planning system, which I've already mentioned, has very good descriptions of who's responsible for what and the benefits of integrated water management, and also the critical success factors for delivering integrated water management through partnerships. So in summary, DWMPs won't deliver unless the key actors outside water companies are involved. Catchment partnerships can play a key role in encouraging and coordinating input to DWMPs, but resources are a key constraint. Water companies should be aware of the value of other partners' contributions, and I think, as you've heard, a lot of them already are, and other catchment partners need a justification to participate, and that justification is likely to be in relation to being able to achieve what they want, which they through partnership working and co-funding, which they couldn't otherwise achieve on their own. So I think that leads us nicely into the discussion of the issues and how we might take this forward. So I'll just stop sharing my screen, and if I can get the other speakers, Zoe, Vicky, Harriet, and Adrian back up. We'll try and summarise. We've got a lot of questions, and I'll try and summarise them with some help from Rob on so that we can sort of group them together so we can get through all the issues. I think the main issue that that's come up, or one of the key issues that's come up so far, is funding. And one of the questions around this is, are there any specific examples of additional funds being found beyond funds provided by the Environment Agency for getting things done on the ground through working with partners and co-funding?
Did you want me to come in, Peter, on that?
Please do, Zoe.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it really depends on the project, and I think we are starting to see a more diverse source of funding coming in to support partnership projects. I think the River Frome Reconnected, obviously we were successful with that DEFRA bid, which was one of 25 projects funded nationally. So I know that's DEFRA and INEA obviously very close, but I think there's been a big rush through the partnerships in the last year or so to try and get hold of these bigger pots through the Green Recovery Challenge Fund or the DEFRA Flood Innovation Fund, and there's been a lot of partnership effort put into jointly submitting applications to that, and it's very resource heavy applying for those. But if you are successful, then you do get 5 or 6 years, or maybe shorter terms of funding. Other things that are being investigated in our catchment and piloted are things like the catchment market. So the Bristol Avon catchment market was successful, and that was funded through the Green Recovery Challenge Fund. But it's looking at how that can. They're piloting it for the next few years to see if it works, and then if they can stack up the credits from buyers, then that could be another source of funding that comes into the catchment and could potentially fund things like nature-based solutions and target that to align alongside other sources of funding. And I suppose the third source of funding that we see in our catchment is through the local authorities. So where you've got programs already set up, there's a water space program that flows down through the Bath area of the River Avon at the minute, and they've managed to unlock things like Section 106 and SIL funding to help deliver some of the River Avon parks and things like that. So we are seeing other sources of funding coming in, but there is still quite a strong reliance on that Environment Agency funding, and the things like Heritage Lottery funding and the more charitable funds are very highly competitive, and it takes a lot of time and effort to go for those. So yeah, hopefully that's given a bit of an example of how it's working in our catchment.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come in on that funding issue? The other thing we've been asked is specifically about funds to support local engagement. That's obviously an issue because getting partners to engage when they're really strapped for resources is a real challenge.
Just to add to that, Peter, I think our experience within CaBA is that actually, if a little bit of that sort of money were made available, actually catch-up partnerships can, act as a multiplier and bring in other key stakeholders, potentially other key sources of funding as well.
Yeah.
Do you want me to come in on this?
Vicky, yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the DWMP options that we are looking at, a key part of that is the customer engagement and getting that wider awareness of the drainage and wastewater infrastructure. So I think where it's identified that greater engagement is needed, then perhaps that could be somewhere that we could tie in with the DWMP, and then look to also see how we can bring in other wider stakeholders' messages. and have those discussions with the different partners about how best to deliver those messages and who best those messages is coming from. So I appreciate it's not a direct answer in terms of the actual funding, but if we do identify a certain engagement side of things, then that could be a way forward.
Thank you. On a point related to local authorities finding the funding for this, it's noticed that Emily Clark said that the Environment Bill amends the Flood and Water Management Act, the duty for risk management authorities to cooperate, to extend it to cover DWMPs. I honestly don't think that'll help, because it already there was already a duty to cooperate between under the Flood and Water Management Act for planning authorities to cooperate with lead local flood authorities. Has that happened? In some cases, but not in most. I think we need something stronger to encourage local authorities to really engage with the DWMP process. Anyway, that's just a point that I noticed in the chat there.
Yeah, Peter, just from our point of view, I think we've been in a similar position. Obviously, resources are a massive issue for lots of local authorities and catchment partnerships. I think from our point of view, we sort of agree is that actually we need to know how far that's going to go in terms of actually supporting local authorities with getting resource and funding for that, because as you say, otherwise it's just another regulation which is put on them without any kind of backup and support for that. So we'd be in favour of them getting more support from government to be able to support us, but it's just as far, we don't know how far that will go within the Environment Bill yet. So no, but say we need to keep an eye on this as an issue, because I think it really is crucial. Another question we've been asked is how are we assessing and prioritising the multiple benefits that DWMPs can achieve, so you can work out which schemes to prioritise, which schemes should go ahead. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, in terms of our experience, that's evolving. We're utilising some of the existing tools that are already there around, Syria Best and other things. Valuing benefit is, as I say, something that really is evolving, and particularly on schemes that we're trying to deliver now as well. We're trying to learn from that, and actually trying to understand. Valuing benefits all very good. You follow a tool, you follow a process. It's an excellent opportunity, but actually, when you come to deliver those schemes, and then you come to look at the legacy of those schemes, actually the benefits sometimes that you thought you were going to get are far exceeded in terms of what they delivered. So we're trying to build some of that into our process as well, really, in terms of trying to make best use of that information, but. Valuing it, costing it, it's an issue that we've all got. We've got to try and do it consistently to allow the DWMPs to be able to be reflected on in terms of that national sort of view and how funding may be attributed and apportioned across companies. And what we need to do is we need to build on that and continue conversations and bring in and draw in other stakeholders to that process, because that's very key, to understand their experiences and their learning and so forth. So it's not just a sort of one-sided approach to that valuing, really. So
anyone else, any thoughts on prioritizing?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the framework, the phase that we're at the moment is the programme appraisal phase. So as an industry, we are just all having those conversations at the moment to actually move those forward. The other element that we will have to bring into the decision making is our customers' willingness to pay and what our customers want. And so that will be really key as to bring that into the decision making as well.
Yeah.
Can I just jump in here and ask kind of a related question in a way, or leading on from what you just said there, Vicky, about nature-based solutions? And if you saw it perhaps a little bit in black and white, sort of nature-based or SUD solutions versus hard engineering solutions, how do you see that playing out in terms of the finances, and presumably the form of the nature-based solutions have got greater opportunity to bring in co-finance from other stakeholders potentially. So I just wondered what your views were on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we were really keen to do as part of the DWMP is to look at where we can implement sustainable solutions. I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that quite often they do end up being more expensive to install. You've got the ongoing maintenance side of things that also needs to be considered. And with the sustainable solutions as well, you need to make sure that that maintenance regime is really clearly bottomed out from the starting point to ensure that you don't increase flood risk. But one of the things that we're really keen to do is to look to see where we can separate surface water out of the systems. And, you know, that in itself could also then provide opportunities to see where we can tie in with the lead local flood authorities to look at where we can address the existing surface water flooding problems. And then that could potentially bring in additional match funding for that. So it's part of, you know, one of the many things that we need to consider. But it also needs to be considered in linking in with our regulatory requirements. Because with the sustainable solutions, we haven't quite always got that guarantee that it will fix the problems that we're looking to resolve. So we've got a lot of research to do on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd say similar from our point of view. We're just sort of, I think the Ofwat is still, our regulator is also still sort of learning on this one as well. So I think there are still a lot of conversations going on in the background as to how we deal with the kind of bill impact of potentially adding in a 25-year long-term plan for wastewater to what customers now expect from their bill, and how we kind of, if we're looking to keep it the same, then really there is quite limited on what we can do. It might be that does push us towards more kind of partnership projects, but as Vicky sort of said, they do normally come out as kind of being initially being more expensive and potentially, you know, not as resilient and less kind of monitored in the future. So it's a real kind of ongoing conversation, I think, in the background as to how much we sort of restrict the DWMP to actually looking at bill impact and how it will affect bills, and how much Ofwat are going to be able to kind of change slightly to say that we can increase bills slightly in some areas, and maybe the aim will be to focus on support for vulnerable customers. I think that's what our kind of CC Water has said to us, is maybe if we don't mind bills going up like a little bit, as long as we can make sure you've got a kind of support for vulnerable customers. So I think that will be the really key thing in the next year, to understand how that's going to play out with Ofwat and moving it into the business plan, and how we can impact bills and that kind of thing. Yeah.
An issue that's you've raised in presentations and is coming out of this discussion is the different timelines for different processes in not just in the DWMPs but the other plans. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about aligning this. I'm thinking of things like timescales for local plans, timescales for surface water management plans, and timescales for updating these in relation to DWMPs. That's obviously an issue in terms of getting the justification for involvement of stakeholders and tying things together in terms of making effective plans that join up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from our perspective, I think one of the things that I'm very fortunate with is that we've got those established relationships and networks and those ongoing conversations that are already embedded and in place. And so it's not ideal that we're working to different timescales, but actually if you're having these conversations on the longer term, then at least you can start to bring in those priorities and align them when those different plans need updating. And I think the other thing with the DWMP is it is a 5-year plan. So if there are opportunities that we can't get into cycle 1, then we can potentially bring them in cycle 2 and cycle 3. So, yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the timing issues?
I think just to back up what Vicky was saying, you know, we're constantly being asked to try and map all of the different drivers and influencing plans and strategies and how that has an impact, and what is the catchment partnership's role of coordinating and facilitating this. And it's from my perspective, it sometimes feels unrealistic to try and align it all together because they're all just set off on the different routes. I think the key thing what Vicky was saying is pre-planning and forecasting and having the time and capacity for the individual partners to understand what are the opportunities coming up and when do they need to feed into the different processes, and can we be more streamlined and efficient in how we do that, because you can get stakeholder fatigue as well. You know, if everybody's constantly going out and wanting to do workshops and reviewing it, you know, that people aren't getting paid to attend these things, it's all voluntary. And I think that one of the key things that's been put back to us a lot, you know, we try and work closely with the nature partnerships where we can to try and join up those conversations. Just being aware that there's already that ask of lots of different plans with deadlines and timelines on, you know, we've got to find more efficient ways of responding collaboratively and working together on those things, really. But it's an ongoing challenge. I don't think there's a silver bullet answer to that one.
No. Now, the other related question is in relation to the geographic boundaries of the responsibility of the various organisations which are inputting into this process, because you've all showed examples where and I've mentioned the number of different local authorities and the number of catchment partnerships that are covered by a water company's area. So I wondered whether you had any more thoughts about, particularly where catchment partnerships, where there are a number of catchment partnerships within the water company's area of responsibility, how you manage that, and also the difference between the aspirations of an urban catchment partnership and a more rural catchment partnership in terms of bringing those together and joining it up. Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, just from a Thames Water point of view, I mean, everyone else has had different experiences with catchment partnerships. We definitely, I think, struggled slightly in the way that we've done our engagement based on a TRFCC partnership area has obviously not matched fully with some of the catchment partnerships. I think part of the role that we're going to try and look to in the future is really, as we sort of discussed earlier, is trying to use those catchment hosts in a bit of a better way and trying to make our side of the kind of catchment partnership liaison a little bit easier, so that we can, now we understand the process of how we create the DWMP in the next cycle. I think we're going to start trying to do a bit of a kind of more early engagement with catchment partnerships on the risk areas, so that we can really kind of push, like, to make sure that, you know, if you can't attend all of these many workshops that we're then putting in the diary, as you say, we've aligned with the other plans that catchment partnerships have fed into, and we've also got a really good kind of close relationship with more of those catchment partnerships. And as you say, the difference between the kind of more mature ones in our area, which like Thames 21, who look after quite a lot of the catchment partnerships in London, want very different things to the catchment partnerships out in kind of Gloucestershire and Wiltshire. So I think it's one for us to kind of look at from Thames Water point of view. But I do think it is a challenge that we're gonna find. I'm not saying we're going to be able to do it straight away, but I do think there are ways we can improve that. And I think a lot of other companies maybe did their engagement on river basin areas instead of partnership areas. So it might be something for the Thames that we look at in the future, changing the boundaries that we engage on so that we can get more engagement in those areas. So one to be thought on our side, I have to say.
Yeah. Question related to that, we've had do the smart catchments come with a catchment officer funded by the water company, and could they help with that integration? I mean, obviously, water companies fund catchment officers in a number of cases.
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm aware of the smart catchment.
I'm not sure what a smart catchment is either. I hope it's
Apologies.
I just picked up.
So for Thames Water, we have smarter water catchments, which is a really kind of early program, which we're trying to kind of do whole catchment management together, so that you're looking at wastewater and water and doing something like the Headstone Manor case study that I showed earlier, which pulls together all of those things. So for those at the moment, there's not a kind of, there's a little team of them. There's not a kind of funded rep that would cover the whole region, but it is something that I think we could look into to be able to bring to life some more of those partnership projects. So we are trying to work really closely, DWMP and the Smarter Water Catchments team. But at the moment, I think the Smarter Water Catchments are focusing on kind of 3 or 4 pilot areas to see how those go over the next year or so on projects, and then we'll hopefully expand it from there. But I think they're a really good opportunity. But as you say, we just need to look into the resource kind of funding side of things for that as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a case of it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all process with the River Frome Reconnected. All of the organisations who are interested in making a difference in that catchment, contributed to that initial post to get the project kicked off, to actually get people looking in and scoping out what the project is. So that was appropriate in that case. It might not be the way that to move things forward in another case. So we'll have to see how that goes.
Right. Got a specific question here for Vicky from David Howarth. Vicky, are you bringing WTP into the DWMP process ahead of WTP for everything else in PR24? And if so, why? Shouldn't DWMP schemes be looked at in the PR24 round alongside all the other water company investments?
Yeah, so the willingness to pay for the PR24 will be done as part of the overall business planning process. We have done some initial customer research just to actually get a feeling from the stakeholders about what their views are specifically relating to the drainage and wastewater infrastructure, because it's really important that we get those views and get a clear understanding of what our customers want from the drainage and wastewater side of things.
Thank you. And to finish off, I'd like you just to think about the one thing that would really make it easier for you to do a really effective DWMP.
I think
one improvement. Yeah, sorry, Harriet. Yeah,
that's all right. I think from our side of things, it's just like early engagement. Even if you have an idea that kind of seems a bit far-fetched and off into the future, we'd love to hear like ideas for your local area now, instead of kind of getting to the future and then not having planned for it. I think we really want all the kind of ideas and opportunities and potentials as soon as possible in the next kind of few months and then years to come, so that we can plan ahead. Because as Vicky and everyone sort of said, this stuff that doesn't happen in the first 5 years, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. So I think we just really want people to be quite innovative at the moment. It doesn't mean that we can do everything, but if we have those ideas, then I think as a partnerships and working together, we actually could do some really cool things in the future. So I just think for us, early engagement, just email us, just contact us, just anything, just send us thoughts and we'll go from there.
Great. Adrian, any one thing that you think that really helped things?
I mean, it's just to build on that. I think it's getting everybody's not buy-in, but just bringing everybody in terms of along with the DWMP journey. You know, these absolutely aren't. We're not going to solve the world overnight with them, but this is a great platform we have to build on long-term planning. So timing is very important, and as you say, these will evolve. And yes, unfortunately, we have got a regulatory output in terms of trying to get these published for the summer of next year. But you know, that's not the end of the journey in terms of what we're doing. They will evolve. They will bring into other programs. They will bring learning in from other activities. So just keep the faith, I think, and keep the conversation going, because you know, to make DWMPs work, you know, there have to be that multi-stakeholder involvement. It's not necessarily just it's not necessarily in terms of delivery. It's just ideas, how we can support things that are going on, sharing of local knowledge and things like that. So that would be my sort of point to leave everybody with, really.
Thank you. Zoe and Vicky, anything to add?
I guess from my perspective, it's continuing the ongoing dialogue and recognising that it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. So for one catchment partnership, we might take a slightly different approach to somewhere else. but actually having that understanding of the different drivers and agendas of all the different stakeholders. So again, it's just keeping that ongoing conversation going. Don't know, Zoe, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with everything that all of the speakers have said. I think from a catchment partnership perspective, it's about that managing expectations and a plea for patience on all sides, because I think there's a lot that needs to be done, and we all know that from all angles. And I think having a sound basis to start from is the best start we can, and we just got to keep working together, really. But it doesn't happen overnight, and it takes a long time to work in partnership, but it is worth it in the end. So it's just committing to that process and making sure all the key stakeholders are committing to it and supporting it as well to make it a success at the end.
Thank you. No, that's really good. I think we'll draw things to a close now because we're rapidly approaching 12 o'clock. I want to thank everybody who's participated. Thank you to all our speakers, and also thank you to the large number of questions we've had. A lot of interest and some very useful stuff coming through. Next steps for this is I'm going to produce a summary of the discussion on the lines of, as I said, of hopefully 10 points for producing, and I don't know whether we'll get 10 points, but key points for producing DWMPs that provide multiple benefits. So we'll share that in the Urban Water Group section of the CaBA website. We'll signpost existing identified resources. I showed you some, there are other people who've showed some, and we'll signpost those on the CaBA website as well. And we'll also consider how we can signpost the current good practice that we've heard about and provide practical, so we can provide practical help to all the catchment partners on working with water companies, so that we really can collectively produce DWMPs that really do produce multiple benefits. So thank you all very much, and look forward to the next webinar, which is at the end of the month on the 30th, and that's on health and well-being. So thank you all. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.